Thank you. Khadija, I teared up. Thank you. That was beautiful and hard to come up and say anything after hearing. Lovely. Thank you. It's such an honor to be here, to be with all of you, to be with Cave Canem, and to learn all the things I've been learning this week. So tonight I thought I would read from a new manuscript of poems, a book that will be out next year that's called Thrall. This first poem has an epigraph that reads, "After a Chalk Drawing" by J.H. Hasselhorst, 1864. Knowledge. Whoever she was, she comes to us like this. Lips parted, long hair spilling from the table like water from a pitcher, nipples drawn out for inspection. Perhaps to foreshadow the object she'll become, a skeleton on a pedestal, a row of skulls on a shelf. To make a study of the ideal female body, 4 men gather around her. She is young and beautiful and drowned, a Venus de Medici risen from the sea, sleeping. As if we could mistake this work for sacrilege, the artist entombs her body in a pyramid of light, a temple of science over which the anatomist presides. In the service of beauty, to know it, he lifts a flap of skin beneath her breast as one might draw back a sheet. We will not see his step-by-step parsing, a translation, Mary or Catherine or Elizabeth to corpus, areola, vulva. In his hands, instruments of the empirical, scalpel, pincers, cold as the room must be cold, all the men in coats trimmed in velvet or fur, soft as the down of her pubis. Now one man is smoking. Another tilts his head to get a better look. Yet another at the head of the table peers down as if enthralled, his fist on a stack of books. In the drawing, this is only the first cut, a delicate wounding, and yet how easily the anatomist's blade opens a place in me, like a curtain drawn upon a room in which each learned man is my father. And I hear again his words. I study my crossbreed child. Misnomer and taxonomy, the language of zoology. Here he is all of them, the preoccupied man, an artist, collector of experience, the skeptic angling his head, his thoughts tilting toward what I cannot know. The marshaller of knowledge, knuckling down a stack of books, even the dissector, his scalpel in hand like a pen poised above me, aimed straight for my heart. This next poem is after a series of Casta paintings. The Casta paintings in colonial Mexico illustrated the mixed blood unions that were taking place in the colony, as well as the offspring of those unions. One of the things that interested me about the paintings is that not only did they show the parents and the children, but also right there on the painting, the various taxonomies created to name them. So you got names like mestizo and castizo, but also because there was an idea that after a few generations, Indian blood could be purified to white, but that the African blood, the taint of African blood, was irreversible. You had names like mulatto returning backwards, hold yourself in midair, and I don't understand you. This is after a series of Casta paintings by Juan Rodriguez Juarez, circa 1715. Taxonomy. 1. De Español y de India produce mestizo. The canvas is a leaden sky behind them, heavy with words, gold letters inscribing an equation of blood. This plus this equals this, as if a contract with nature, or a museum label, ethnographic, precise. See how the father's hand beneath its crown of lace curls around his daughter's head. She's nearly fair as he is. Calidad, see it in the brooch at her collar, the lace framing her face. An infant, she is born over the servant's left shoulder, bound to him by a sling, the plain blue cloth knotted at his throat. If the father, his hand on her skull, divines, as the physiognomist does, the mysteries of her character, discursive, legible on her light flesh, in the soft curl of her hair, we cannot know it, so gentle the eye he turns toward her. The mother, glancing sideways toward him, the scarf on her head, white as his face, his powdered wig, gestures with one hand a shape like the letter C. See, she seems to say, what we have made. The servant, still a child, cranes his neck, turns his face up toward all of them. He is dark as history, origin of the word native, the weight of blood, a pale mistress on his back, heavier every year. 2. De Español y Negra produce mulatto. Still, the centuries have not dulled the sullenness of the child's expression. If there is light inside him, it does not shine through the paint that holds his face in profile, his domed forehead, eyes nearly closed beneath a heavy brow. Though inside, the boy's father stands in his cloak and hat. It's as if he's just come in, or that he's leaving. We see him transient, rolling a cigarette, myopic, his eyelids drawn against the child passing before him. At the stove, the boy's mother contorts, watchful, her neck twisting on its spine, red beads yoked at her throat like a necklace of blood, her face so black she nearly disappears into the canvas, the dark wall upon which we see the words that name them. What should we make of any of this? Remove the words above their heads, put something else in place of the child, a table perhaps upon which the man might set his hat, or a dog upon which to bestow the blessing of his touch, and the story changes. The boy is a palimpsest of paint, layers of color, history rendering him that precise shade of in-between. Before this, he was nothing, blank canvas, before image or word, before a last brushstroke fixed him in his place. 3. De Español y Mestiza produce Castiza. How not to see in this gesture the mind of the colony? In the mother's arms, the child hinged at her womb, dark cradle of mixed blood, call it Mexico, turns toward the father, reaching to him as if back to Spain, to the promise of blood alchemy, 3 easy steps to purity. From a Spaniard and an Indian, a mestizo. From a mestizo and a Spaniard, a castizo. From a castizo and a Spaniard, a Spaniard. We see her here, 1 generation away, nearly slipping her mother's careful grip. 4. The Book of Castas. Call it the Catalogue of Mixed Bloods, or the Book of Not Spaniard, not white, but mulatto returning backwards, or Hold Yourself in Midair, and the Morisca, the Lobo, the Chino, Sambo Albino, and the No Te Entiendo, the I Don't Understand You. Guidebook to the colony, record of each crossed birth, it is the typology of taint, of stain, blemish, sullying spot, that which can be purified, that which cannot, Canaan's black fate. How like a dirty joke it seems. What do you call that space between the dark geographies of sex? Call it the taint, as in it taint one and it taint the other. Illicit and yet naming still what is between. Between her parents, the child, mulatto, returning backwards, cannot slip their hold, the triptych their bodies make, in paint, in blood, her name, written down in the book of castas, all her kind, in thrall to a word. Lost it on the last word, which was word. I'm scared of this mic now. This next poem is about a myth, or the myth of the miracle of the black leg. It dates back to the 14th century, wherein pictorial representations of the miracle transplant, black donor, white recipient, appeared much later than written versions. There are altarpieces depicting the miracle in several countries, just as poems and narratives depicted in various languages. Miracle of the black leg. 1. Always the dark body hewn asunder. Always one man is healed, his sick limb replaced, placed in another man's grave. The white leg buried beside the corpse, or attached as if it were always there. If not for the dark appendage, you might miss the story beneath this story. What remains each time the myth changes. How, in one version, the doctors harvest the leg from a man 4 days dead in his tomb at the church of a martyr. Or, in another, desecrate a body fresh in the graveyard at St. Peter in chains. There was buried just today an Ethiopian. Even now, it stays with us. When we mean to uncover the truth, we dig, say, unearth. 2. Emblematic in paint, signifier of the body's lacuna, the black leg is at once a grafted narrative, a redacted line of text, and in this scene, a dark stocking pulled above the knee. Here the patient is sleeping, his head at rest in his hand. Beatific, he looks as if he'll wake from a dream. On the floor, beside the bed, a dead Moor. Hands crossed at the groin, the swapped limb white and rotting, fused in place. And in the corner, a question, poised as if to speak the syntax of sloughing a snake's curved form. It emerges from the mouth of a boy like a tongue, slippery and rooted in the body as knowledge. For centuries, this is how the miracle repeats. The myth in words or wood or paint is a record of thought. 3. See how the story changes. In one painting, the Ethiop is merely a body, featureless in a coffin, so black he has no face. In another, the patient at the top of the frame seems to writhe in pain, the black leg grafted to his thigh. Below him, a mirror of suffering, the blackamoor, his body a fragment arched across the doctor's lap as if dying from his wound. If not imminence, the soul's bright anchor, blood passed from one to the other. What knowledge haunts each body? What history? What phantom ache? One man always low in a grave or on the ground, the other up high, closer to heaven. One man always diseased, the other a body in service, plundered. 4. Both men are alive in Violdo's carving. In twinned relief, they hold the same posture, the same pained face, each man reaching to touch his left leg. The black man on the floor holds his stump. Above him, the doctor restrains the patient's arm as if to prevent him touching the dark amendment of flesh. How not to see it? The men bound one to the other, symbiotic, one man rendered expendable, the other worthy of this sacrifice. In version after version, even when the Ethiopian isn't there, the leg is a stand-in, a black modifier against the white body, or a piece cut off, as in origin of the word comma, caesura in a story that's still being written. This is another Costa painting, and the title of it means "From Albino and Spaniard, a return backwards is born." It's 1785 to 1790, and the artist is anonymous. Torna atras. The unknown artist has rendered the father a painter, and so we see him at his work, painting a portrait of his wife, their dark child watching nearby, a servant grinding colors in the corner. The woman poses just beyond his canvas and cannot see her likeness, her less than mirror image coming to life beneath his hand. He has rendered her homely, so unlike the woman we see in this scene, dressed in the late century's fashion, a chicador, mark of beauty in the shape of a crescent moon affixed to her temple. If I say his painting is unfinished, that he has yet to make her beautiful, has yet to match the elegant sweep of her hair, the graceful tilt of her head, has yet to adorn her dress with lace and trim, it is only one way to see it. You might see instead that the artist, perhaps to show his own skill, has made the father a dilettante, incapable of capturing his wife's beauty, or that he cannot see it, his mind's eye reducing her to what he's made, as if to reveal the illusion immanent in her flesh. If you consider the centuries' mythology of the body, that a dark spot marked the genitals of anyone with African blood, you might see how the black moon on her white face recalls it. The Rosita she passes to her child, marking him torna atras. If I tell you such words were born in the Enlightenment's hallowed rooms, that the wages of empire is myopia, you might see the father's vision as desire embodied in paint. This rendering of his wife, born of need to see himself as architect of truth, benevolent patriarch, father of uplift, ordering his domain. And you might see why, to understand my father, I look again and again at this painting, how it is that a man could love and so diminish what he loves. And I'm going to finish with the newest poem in the book that may or may not be ready, but I've been talking to Toi about it. I thought I felt the click that said it made the book was done, but you can tell me otherwise. It has an epigraph from Proverbs 18:15, the wise heart seeks knowledge. Enlightenment. In the portrait of Jefferson that hangs at Monticello, he is anchored on a blue-gray ground, a wash of paint that seems to hold him in relief. In 1805, when Jefferson sat for the artist, he was already linked to an affair with his slave. He is rendered two-toned, a study in contrast, his forehead white with illumination, the rest of his face in shadow, his eyes behind a dark veil. Solemn and white-haired, Jefferson gazes out across the centuries, his lips fixed as if he's just uttered some final word. The first time I saw the painting, I listened as my father explained the contradictions, how Jefferson hated slavery, though out of necessity, my father said, had to own slaves. That his views on race, his moral position meant he could not have fathered those children, would have been impossible, my father said. For years, we debated the distance between word and deed, Jefferson's conflicted enlightenment. I'd follow my father from book to book, gathering my own citations, listen as he named, like a field guide to Virginia, each flower and tree and bird, as if to prove a man's pursuit of knowledge is larger than his shortcomings, the limits of his vision. I did not know then the dark subtext of our story, that my father could imagine Jefferson's words made flesh in my flesh, the improvement of the blacks in body and mind in the first instance of their mixture with the whites, and how my father could believe he'd made me better. When I think of this now, I see how the past holds us captive, its beautiful ruin etched on the mind's eye. My young father, a rough outline of the old man he's become, needing to show me the better measure of his heart, an equation writ large at Monticello. That was years ago. Now, visiting again, we take in how much has changed. There's talk of Sally Hemings, someone asking, how white was she? Parsing the fractions as if to name what made her worthy of Jefferson's attentions. A near white quadroon mistress, not a plain black slave. At the entrance, when our guide tells us to imagine it's the past, 200 years ago, I can't resist whispering to my father, this is where we split up. I'll head around to the back. And when he laughs, I know he's grateful I've made a joke of it, this history that links us, white father, black daughter, even as it renders us other to each other.